Hello, my Facebook and YouTube family. How are you today? Rebecca, I know I always say, have I got a treat for you today? But we really got a treat today. Yes, we really got a treat today because if it's anything that has to do with something that's positive for the Houston community, something that's positive for the especially the Southeast Houston community, we're gonna try to bring it to you.
Of course.
Every time. Rebecca, we try. We may not get everything, but we're gonna try. And I'm gonna tell you, probably I'm not gonna say last week, earlier this week, I happened to be on my Facebook page and I was looking, going through some of the different postings, and one of my Facebook friends, um, Constable Smokey Phillips, posts all of the events that are upcoming events and things that are coming on. And I happened to look on his page and it said free college tuition to all senior citizens via Houston Community College. And I said, skirt, how my friends list on Houston do. And you know how they stop the car with their feet? Okay. It was almost like that. And I immediately messaged him and I said, can you please tell me who I would reach out to find out exactly how to get more information about this? And within 3 minutes, he messaged me back. He said, you need to reach out to Dr. Prieta Vanderbilt Stallworth, who is here with us today in the studio.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for
I know when
coming in.
Crystal called me this week,
Yes.
and she was like, so we're gonna have a guest by the name of Dr. Prieta. So I'm like, first thing I said, Pri, of course.
I actually said, Rebecca, I think one of your good friends or family members is going to be on our show this week.
Definitely.
Yes. And then we figured out the connection because the thing about it is your name is not an everyday name. It's only but one in Houston. But Dr. Prieta, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became affiliated with Houston Community College, kind of where you're from, and why this is so important to the community and to Houston?
Well, I was born and raised here in Houston, Herman Hospital.
Yes.
I grew up in Blue Ridge Section 1. My parents bought the first subdivision built house in Blue Ridge Section 1, right down the street from Reynolds Elementary.
Yeah.
My parents kept us in the community schools, Reynolds, Woodson, and Worthing.
Absolutely.
My sisters did Adams, Reynolds, Adams, and Worthing. My oldest sister actually did Grimes.
Wow.
That was her first school. And so I stayed in the community. It was a great environment. I know people say, "Oh, Sunnyside is this, Sunnyside is that," but we were really family. I could tell you probably 90% of the homes were two-parent households.
And we all grew up, just by the way, we all grew up in Sunnyside. Yeah.
We had teachers who did not play. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's right.
We had counselors who told you where you would go to school and what degree you would get.
Yeah.
That is exactly what happened to me.
Right.
I was a geek. I was a science geek. And my counselor said, you will go through a dual degree program. You're going to go to Rice University. You're going to go in chemical engineering. I said, what is chemical engineering? She said, you'll find out when you get there. So
Awesome.
at a time in our lives, we didn't argue with our elders. If our elders said, this is what you will do, then that is what you would do.
Without question.
I did not know what chemical engineering was. I went to Texas Southern. I did chemistry, loved chemistry, absolutely loved chemistry. It was where I belonged. So chemical engineering was my profession. And I got to Rice. It was like day and night.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, it was like day and night.
Wow.
I took 18, 19 hours of science and technology and mathematics at TSU. That was literally the equivalent of taking 6 hours at Rice.
Really?
It was just, the transition was overwhelming.
Wow.
But I was determined because it really was where I wanted to be.
Exactly.
And I think that when you put kids where they want to be, no matter what the challenge is, they will rise to the
Absolutely.
They will. Absolutely, they will.
and so I finished TSU, I finished Rice, I stayed at Rice and got a master's.
Uh-huh.
I recently found out 41 years later
Uh-huh.
that I was the first African American to get a graduate degree in engineering at Rice.
Wow.
I can believe it.
Wow.
That's awesome.
1984.
That's
1984.
Yes.
Can you imagine? And in 1984, no one black had gotten a graduate degree in engineering.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And so I just found this out about 6 months ago. Someone was doing the archival records.
And you weren't trying to be a trailblazer.
No,
You were just doing
trying
what she loved to do.
Yeah. So
That's amazing.
I took that degree. I did engineering, and they really put me on the programming side of the house.
Okay.
So I was more on the computer engineering side of the chemical engineering
Okay.
discipline, which was good because I love nuts and bolts.
Right.
I did some very interesting projects. I programmed the light ends units for the fluid catalytic cracking unit, and everybody said, "What is a fluid cracker?"
Now, what you just said, was that a different language?
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
teasing.
yeah. It's that little
Exactly.
machine that makes a whole lot of money for a chemical plant. It makes more money than all the other chemical plants.
Wow. That's
And then-
amazing.
I was appointed, the late great Elizabeth Spates. In 1987, HISD decided they no longer wanted to run two institutions. HISD established HCC in 1971.
Wait a second.
Wait
I
a
didn't know
second.
that.
Wow. Okay, so now we're going to history class.
Okay.
And we're history teachers. So we
Yes.
want to know, tell us more.
So they decided they were really tired of trying to run two boards and they needed to establish a board for Houston Community College. Each board member had the opportunity to choose their own successor. And so I was not 30 at the time.
Okay.
And Elizabeth Spates decided that I would sit in her District 9
Right.
seat.
Oh,
Now, that sounds like that's really nice, right? But when you have a mother and her best friend is Elizabeth Spates,
right.
eh,
You didn't question it.
not only do you not question it, you're terrified
Okay.
because you absolutely understand that if you mess up, they're going to show up in the boardroom
Absolutely.
and publicly humiliate you.
Absolutely.
I had lived that a couple of times in high school when my kids would see my mother park in the front of the school and they would yell down the aisle, "Prieta, here comes your mama." And we all staring. That kind of mom.
Yeah, I know about
And
that.
so she appointed me and she said, "If you mess this up, you have to deal with me and your mother," which
Yeah.
God knows I did not want to do that. It was an amazing experience.
Right.
I was really able to do some great things for District 9, in particular, purchasing the 100 acres on 288 South to build what is now South
Right.
Campus.
Ooh.
That happened.
I had no idea that there was an affiliation ever between HISD and HCC.
Yes, yes.
So prior to that particular time, and tell me that date again. What was that?
1987 is when they decided, and in 89 is when they appointed us.
So there was no Houston Community College?
There was, but Houston Community College was run by the Houston Independent School District Board. They had
Wow.
44 locations. They used the junior high schools and the high schools to build the
Right.
capacity, and they built it so well
Right.
that you had all of these locations and all of them were thriving.
That is
And they
awesome.
said, okay, we're gonna have to create, when they gave us the charge to do something with it.
Yeah.
It's 44 locations, it's all over the place. We have
Wow.
one president running all of this, and we
It was
said,
too much.
that
That
was
was
too
a lot.
much.
That was
So we decided that we needed 5 colleges, regional.
right.
And so we created that. We wanted each college to reflect its community,
Absolutely.
its region, and we did that. So we had Northeast and Northwest and Central College and Southeast and Southwest. And it worked. And we were committed. The 9 of us were committed. There were only 2 women on the board, myself and Herlinda Garcia, and I served with I will always call it the late great Bruce Austin, my dear friend that passed away a couple of years ago, and Jean Locke,
Okay.
and we served together on that board. And it was a very diverse board. which was a very interesting thing because HISD was a diverse board.
Mhm.
And most boards in the country were not diverse like that.
Right.
And so I spent 5.5 years. And when I left, I moved to Mississippi. I married and moved to Mississippi. I was married to a Mississippi councilman, Biloxi City Councilman, who
Okay.
had national power,
Okay.
which was, that was kind of unusual to marry somebody in Mississippi with that kind of power nationwide.
And African American.
And African American. And he served at the national level, which was then with Maxine Waters.
Okay.
Okay, come on, Auntie
She was, she was
Maxine.
state level at that time. And so that was an eye-opening experience because Mississippi was a very different environment.
Right.
Um,
I can imagine.
Southern Belle is a very real thing. It's a very real thing.
Wow.
And I was mentored by Lucia Marion Roberts, who is the mother of Robin Roberts.
Okay.
And so talk about a soft tongue that could break a bone. She would say, "Oh no, dear, that's not how we do things here."
Right.
I mean, the quintessential,
Like,
yes,
Southern
Belle.
Belle. Right.
But she wielded extraordinary power because she was the state chair of their tourism board. She was brilliant, and I learned so much from her. I came home after 7 years with 2 kids and started my journey as a PTO queen.
Okay.
My children went to Parker Johnston, Bel Air, and Parker Johnston HSPVA because they were.
Okay, so you moved to the Westbury area.
No, I was actually beyond the Westbury area. I am far southwest. I am 1 mile from 59 South at Beltway 8.
Okay.
So I'm at the very corner edge. But
Okay.
Parker Elementary is a magnet school. So
But okay, got
my
you.
kids
That's
were
right.
musicians, and they were musicians. My daughter was a musician from 1st grade. My son was a musician from 4 years old.
Wow.
Parker Elementary it's still an amazing school for kids.
Music magnet.
800 her kids play the violin and the guitar respectfully, and they are brilliant
Oh.
at their craft.
And my daughter said, I don't want to play violin anymore, but my son still plays double bass and guitar and piano and percussions, and he teaches music to
Wow.
children.
Wow.
So, and he plays, he still performs. So he does classical and jazz and rhythm and blues and funk and whatever. Well, you paying him if it's a check, he's coming.
So now you've come back to Houston. You could have planted your roots anywhere else, but you decided to bring it back to Houston.
I wanted my children to be raised in Houston Independent School District because I knew the value of it and because I knew what it had done for me.
Okay.
And so in 2017, they were like, okay, Mama, you've raised us. You've spent all your money on us. You've put all of your time in us. Go away and find a life. My children put me out of motherhood. And so for 1 year, I did a doctorate in Christian education because I wanted to understand my spiritual station, which is intercessor.
Right.
And
Right.
so I spent a year in a theological environment, and I wrote a 200-page dissertation
Wow.
because I wanted to understand the difference
Wow.
between an intercessor and a prayer warrior, because
Okay.
there is a difference. And I figured since I'm an engineer and I learned statistics, I can prove this statistically, which I
Right.
did do.
Okay.
So
So then you decided to run
Y'all see
for-
why she's one of my mentors.
you decided to throw your hat in the ring again because you couldn't sit at home. Come on now, honestly.
I finished.
Oh, no. I used to tell her all the time. She used to be like, you know what, Becky, I just need a break. I need a break. I was like, good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
I finished my doctorate. I walked across the stage on the 17th of August, and then a week or so later walked into
This is 2018,
2017. A week or so later walked into Houston Community College Board Services office and signed on to run for District
Oh, that's
9.
awesome. That's awesome.
And I ran against 2 gentlemen.
Uh-huh.
And one of the gentlemen, his wife was my supervisor because I was an adjunct professor. She was my supervisor,
Yeah.
which can make things a little
Yeah,
ticky.
absolutely.
But it was absolutely great. And my cousin Cherie, who passed away, and
Uh-huh.
she said, "You can't do this by yourself. I'm gonna help you." And they only ever knew her as cousin. Nobody knew her name.
Yes, yes.
Because I always said, well, cousin will handle that. Cousin take care of that.
Uh-huh.
After she helped me win my election, she went to Sheila Jackson Lee and several other politicians. They said, where is cousin? because
Right.
we watched her put you in the seat.
That's
And so we need cousin. And it was an amazing run. I knew that it was God. It was definitely not me.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
And so 2018, I was sworn in the same district that I was born and raised in, that I
Wow.
had served before. And as I looked around and I said, what can I do with this? Because
Right.
what's going on? What do we have going on? There was nothing going on in District 9. There were 125 students a semester at the District 9 South Campus.
And where was that at that time?
It's still at Airport at
Oh.
288 South.
You know, I'm so glad you said that, because I remember when they built that particular building. And it was, it was a wonderful, wonderful thing to see coming out there into that area.
Yes.
We would look over there,
And it would
and there'd be like
empty.
four cars in the parking lot and that kind of thing. And my mother and I would say, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I hope they can get enough people in there to keep it open.
It was,
Yeah.
when I walked in, they had built the second building, the workforce building. None of the labs were set up. The equipment was just in there.
Wow.
It's 2 stories, so
Yes.
second floor is all
It's
classrooms.
beautiful.
It's all of the skills and trades. All the construction trades are in that building. You guys will have to come and tour. On July 19th, we do the health, wellness, and backpack drive. Come and see everything.
And those trades are what? You said
It's all the construction trades: HVAC, electrical, plumbing, drywall, solar,
wow.
all of that. We have a 2-story building in the building because they've got to learn to wire.
Right,
and set the-
right.
It's
So
amazing.
it's a lab too.
It's a lab too. And so I said, this is unacceptable. 125 students a semester. The front of the building, the green space was horrific. There was a huge ditch in the front,
Right.
and it was
Yeah.
snakes and
Oh,
rancid
wow.
water. And I said, oh
No,
no.
no.
My mother and Elizabeth's face
Yeah.
are gonna come from heaven and they're gonna take me out.
Yeah.
And so I just really started pushing. I put on my PTO queen hat
Yes.
because I had been president at Johnston Middle School, and we went from a few, maybe 40 or 50 members to
Uh-huh.
400 families
Yes,
in a class.
yes.
Because I was like, we're going to all work. So I went out into the community.
Yeah.
I said, what can we do? And I noticed that my seniors had nothing to do.
Wow.
Now I'm sitting at the board table and they were approving the list of demographics that would get free tuition,
Sure,
reduced
that's
tuition.
right.
And I'm going down the list and I'm saying, this is a really nice, what?
Yeah, you were telling me
That
about
one line, seniors 55 and older got a $10 discount.
No.
I said,
And they can
Oh.
least afford, because they're on fixed incomes, they can least afford to
and they paid all the
reduced
taxes for
tuition.
this to look
That's
like it.
right.
I said, oh, no, this is no. No, I'm looking at everybody free, $10. No, so I started pushing. I said, how do we change this policy?
Right.
This policy needs to change. It
Yes.
needs to go, seniors need to be coming to HCC for free.
But
They need to be
they
able.
made the majority of the taxes
Yes,
in
they
the area.
And when you start looking for volunteers, who are the first people to step up?
The
Seniors. And so I said, this can't happen. I had some pushback.
Of course you did.
But one of the
Who would
interesting,
push back to something like that? And I don't want you to name any names, but what were the reasons that people were pushing back?
just probably because I asked for it. I've learned that when you don't align yourself
Right.
to the left or to the right.
Yes.
I was always centrist.
Yes.
What do you need for your campus? What do you need for your district?
Yes.
I knew the value of 104 acres on 288 South.
Right. Right.
It is $1 million an acre.
Absolutely.
It is. And it belongs to Sunnyside. That campus was built so that that entire region
Could go there.
could go there.
Right.
Yes.
Classes were not offered. And when it would fill, they would move it. They would move classes, they would fill them up and then say, oh, there's no professor, you gotta go to East End, and you gotta go to Northwest, and you gotta go to Southwest, and no. So I said,
And so carelessly, like there's nothing we can do about it.
I said, so let me start my seniors. We have community learning programs that they don't have to pay for. an hour, 90 minutes long.
Yeah.
How to use your cell phone, how to
Yes.
navigate
Yes.
the internet. Things that seniors hadn't really learned. They pick up their phone, they use it, they answer, they hang up.
That's right.
So I had a young man, Dr. Ravi Bambrat, he is still there.
Mhm.
He had a list of community learning programs that did
Wow.
not cost my seniors anything. So I began to navigate through the churches and through the civic clubs and said,
Right.
y'all can take these classes because they're free. And they came. And I said, oh, they need to take real class.
That's right.
But they don't need to pay for it. So
That's
I said, what do you guys know about computers? We don't know nothing.
That's right. And some of them
Oh my
because some of them do not want to come and sit in a general classroom because they feel embarrassed
That's
that they
right.
don't know. And if
That's
they've got lots of questions and you got somebody in here that's 19, somebody in here that's 18, and they're just kind of going through these things on computers, and they'll withdraw from that.
And
Yes.
they didn't grow up with that. They didn't
Yeah.
grow up with technology.
Yeah.
So
And they don't
it's,
see
it's
anybody else
something,
who looks like them.
right. So it's fearful for them because that's just something that's not been a part of their generation.
Experience, that's right.
Their experience.
So AARP 5416, that is the group. Beverly Mitchell Jackson came and she said, they're putting us out of Tom Bass Park. We can't meet there anymore. And I said, not a problem.
Yes.
Why don't you just come on over
Yes.
to South Campus? She said, are you sure? I said,
Yes.
I can host, the trustee and the president can host. What do you need? They said, we only meet 90 minutes every third Thursday of the month.
Wow.
Not a problem. Why don't you guys come? Why don't I introduce you to things? Let's let you take a tour.
Yes.
At the time, she had about 60 people.
And this was when?
This was 2018.
Okay.
This was
So things
right,
are happening fast.
right,
That's
right.
great.
This was
Yeah.
around May 2018. So she said, okay, well, let's see if we can meet. They came to meet. They loved the community room. And so I said, okay, this is really good. I said, what do you guys want to do? There was a 96-year-old in the room, Dorothy Thomas, who was a retired teacher. She said, well, I need to learn computers
Yes.
because I don't know anything about computers. I said,
Right.
I think we could figure out how to fix that. At the same time, I'm maneuvering, trying to figure out how we're going to put this on the agenda
Yes.
so that seniors do not pay.
Right.
Right.
My goal was 55 and older would not pay.
Right.
They modified it, and there was some discussion at the table. I said, well, if you don't vote for this,
Right.
I guess I'll just have to go back and tell every male ballot voter that you just didn't vote to support them.
That's right. And they vote. They are the ones.
They are the voters.
That's right. That's right.
Blackmail. I guess I'll have to tell them.
Yeah.
And I was going to go back to all of those entities, all the churches, all the civic
There
clubs,
you
all
go.
the
That's
super
right.
neighborhoods and say, sorry guys, they said no.
Right.
It was a unanimous vote.
See?
So 55 to 64 paid half tuition and they still pay half. 65 and older pay no tuition.
Wow.
So you might have fees, but you will have no tuition.
Right.
And so for most of the classes, that's practically free.
Yeah.
And so the blessing is, I said, they wanted a computer class. I went back to the chancellor. I said, we need a computer class. The president of South Campus was the president of Central College.
Right.
We need a computer class for seniors. We need to teach the seniors.
Yes.
They prepped 6 instructors, and the first day of enrollment for class, 125 seniors showed.
Wow.
They went and got their friends.
Of course.
And so they set the classes up
Right.
and they got ready to walk to class. And the 96-year-old looked back and said, the very least you could have had was traveling music.
Oh.
But she's an educator, so that's right.
They had a 21-year-old Hispanic woman in the class, and she was like ecstatic. This is great, because she was in the class with all of these elders.
Yes.
I just, I'm the only one here. This is great. And I said, well, what do you want to? No. I'm going to sit right here with them, because
Yeah.
everything that they taught them in the level of detail that this 21-year-old
Right.
could appreciate.
Right.
And they all got through the class. Nobody dropped the class. And then
That
we
is
repeated
awesome.
it. So now we wanted to know, what else do you want to take? Because we're able to create classes that are for them
Right.
so that they do have their compass.
Right.
Oh, they used to help each other in class. I said, yo, gee, this is a test. We're just reading it.
And do you guys have, and I know you do, you all have pictures of any of those first classes?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, we do.
that's awesome.
Yes, I saw, I'll send that to
Yes,
you.
yes.
And so
please
the
do.
lady on the flyer is
Yes.
one of the students.
Okay.
Okay.
And she's one of the AARP 5416. Now, AARP 5416 now has over 200 members
Wow.
in its AARP group. We need those kinds of groups in our communities, especially for us.
And my mother is a member of a senior group that was formed at our church. It's called JMAS, and it's Jones Memorial Area Seniors. And they are continually looking for different things for their members to do. And the thing about it is, their members are 55 plus. So any
This is good for them.
that's me. So but people can you don't have to be 65 in order to be a part of that. They're looking for things to do.
This is wonderful. And we've had our first 2 graduates. Now, you can take 2 classes a semester
Yes.
for as long as you like.
Wow.
You can take any class that you want. I had Charlotte's husband.
Okay.
He went to the Northeast and he took the forklift operating class.
Wow.
He's like, this thing is amazing. I'm gonna go take this and then I'm gonna take that.
Candy store.
It's like a kid in the
So what you're telling me is that people who are taking these are not classes that are scaled back.
No.
These are the regular
These are the
classes.
regular classes.
So you may be sitting in class with an 18-year-old.
And he said, no young people were in class with him. He said, I don't understand this. And forklift operators, those jobs are so plentiful.
They are.
And they make good money.
They make good money. So the seniors now, we're going to give them a tour of the Culinary Arts Building on Alameda at Alabama, and they're going to create a class for them.
So when is this going to take? Tell us a little bit about
That'll
this.
be a little later in the summer.
Okay.
July 19th, AARP 5416 is going to bring 5 senior level vendors to the Health, Wellness, and Backpack Drive. Now, we
Yes.
did the Health, Wellness, and Backpack Drive in 2018.
I was there.
We wanted to
Okay.
bring people to the campus to
Right.
try to get them there to see.
Yeah.
And I got a call at 7:30 in the morning, said, you better get here. They're walking down the side of the
They were.
parade.
That look, I literally I got there at 7:30. I said, I know all these people ain't here for this.
Are you serious?
This was at 7.
Wow.
They hadn't
Close to
even-
1,000 people.
They had not even opened the door.
We had to open the doors and they were there.
That is awesome.
And then I asked,
And how did you promote it? You just
Through the community.
And that's what and I
Word
asked
of
the
mouth.
lady, I said, how long ma'am, how you been here? She said, oh, baby, I've been here since 5:45.
she wanted to be the first one. That is awesome. So is the Health, Wellness, and Backpack Drive something that you all now do yearly?
It is our annual event.
Awesome.
When we did that and we let everybody tour and we had lunch and
Yeah.
people like,
It
you
was
go
a
to school
very-
here?
It was a very nice
It was very well done. We had vendors. We don't charge for our vendors. And I know that's a burden on me, but we don't charge for our vendors because we want them to come. And every year,
Right.
Workforce Solutions comes and looks for people for jobs and vouchers. They'll give you a voucher to come back to HCC to go to school. We have our dentists.
Repeat that one more time.
Vouchers, Workforce Solution gives vouchers for people who want to go to school and have a career. I forged that relationship because Tressel Anderson is a fellow Worthing graduate.
Yeah.
She is the manager of the Workforce Solutions Pearland. She was the manager on the at West Tyner.
Right.
I went in 2018 and said, I really need you to come.
Wow.
And we have forged that relationship. And if you are a person that you need a career change,
Yes.
we can put you in touch with Tressel. She goes through those motions, gives you a voucher. You come back to HCC for a skill and a career, and then you go back to her for a job.
And how important is that in this day and time when, first of all, seniors are being pushed out of certain jobs, being pushed out of careers, that they realize that it's not too late to make a shift.
That's right.
And you have a source here, a resource here that is saying, if you're ready to make that shift, if you're in that position, here, we got the next step for you.
So I have a question. With the Department of Education right now, it's a stay in the the judge blocked it for right now.
Right.
With the Department of Education. If the Supreme Court says, if the Supreme Court gives the president the authority or the position to cut programs and funding, how is that going to affect HCC and the programs that y'all have?
Community college does better than the four-year institutions.
Yeah.
Community colleges are well anchored. Now, I sit on the national board. It's the National Association of Community College Trustees.
Mhm.
That we represent 1,200 community colleges and 6,500 trustees. So we make sure that they know, they understand what that public policy looks like, how it will affect them, what we will and won't have.
Okay.
I also sat on the legislative committee to change the funding formula for community colleges in the state of Texas. There are 50 in the state of Texas. And so our funding formula wasn't quite making the cut in terms of us having enough funding to do what the governor wants.
Yes.
Governor Abbott has decided and has stated and made it very clear that by the year 2030, 60% of Texans will have a credential or a degree.
Okay.
Most Texans, that degree thing is a very
Yeah.
difficult thing.
Yeah.
But credentials of value are these career path
That's right.
credentials or certificates that they can get 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 1 year. And it makes it straightforward because it's hands-on. These are hands-on trainings.
Yes.
And so we have those trainings. Now, as of late, we now have a 4-year degree in healthcare management, and I forget what the exact terminology is.
Yes.
And we have a 4-year degree in AI, robotics, and coding. So we have credentials levels 1, 2, and 3, credentials of value. We have continuing education credentials, CNA, phlebotomy, patient care technician. You can do CNA for 6 weeks, and that guarantees your $15 an hour job.
So what you're telling me, I want to make sure I heard this right, because if I have this question, I know someone else may. There are actually within Houston Community College, there are certain paths where you can earn a BS degree.
Yes, we worked on this in the last 2 years.
Yes.
We are the first community college in the nation to have a 4-year degree for AI and robotics.
And you know what? I'm so glad that that's happening because
That is
the
awesome.
students that we teach,
Yes.
a lot of them are into that.
Yes.
The problem is their parents don't have the money to send them off to college
For
to
that.
major into that.
And so
right.
we have a solution for
And
that.
a lot of the scholarships are partial, so they're not
Yes,
even getting full
yes.
ride.
If you are a high school student, 9th to 12th grade,
Yes.
you can seek a level 1, 2, and 3 AI, robotics, coding, and cybersecurity. You can seek the 2-year degree in AI robotics. You can seek the 4-year degree in AI robotics. It doesn't cost anything.
Wait.
What is the confusion?
Dual
I'm
credit,
confused.
dual credit, and early college high schools
Yes.
do not charge parents for their kids taking college courses.
Right. So when they graduate from high school, they can graduate with a certificate simultaneously in AI.
Not just a certificate. We have a few hundred kids that graduate with a 2-year degree from HCC.
Yeah. So
Every graduation,
then when they
those
go
kids
off
are
to
sitting
college,
in the audience graduate.
right? So then when they go off to college,
They're
in the school
juniors.
in Texas,
Yes.
they're classified as juniors and not freshmen. So then they graduate. So when they graduate from college, they leave in college with 2 degrees, an associate's degree
And a bachelor's.
and a
Yes.
bachelor's.
So really, what you're saying is that if you want to work, if you want to have a career, if you want to be successful, and if you have the aptitude, you don't have any excuses, not
You do
anymore.
not. And I need to give my congressman kudos. I went to Congressman Green for help for the first health, wellness, and backpack drive,
Yes.
and he brought his team
Awesome. That's
to
awesome.
work with HCC for
Yes.
that. And he comes every year. His team comes every year.
That is awesome.
But what he also did is the Congressional App Challenge.
And what's that?
The Congressional App Challenge is where students, high school students who are in dual credit,
Yes.
they can compete, and this is really interesting. They can write an app and compete with that app across the nation against other students in other congressional districts.
And if they
If they win with
Yes.
him, they get to go to Washington D.C. and compete with the other
National.
congressional app winners. Now,
Wow.
God always has a plan because I'm always following
That's right.
and blindfolded and fast backwards. That's my life.
Yeah.
So last November, my alma mater established Rice Bangalore. The year prior, they established Rice France, Rice in
Wow.
Paris. But Rice Bangalore is because Bangalore is the Silicon Valley of India. So
Wow.
Rice decided we're going to work with the top 2 institutions there and then expand as we see fit
Right.
because we understand that Bangalore is the Silicon Valley of India.
Exactly.
That was November 18th. December 5th, I was invited to go to Bangalore
Mhm.
for what's called the Thai Unicon Global Summit.
Okay.
Thai Unicon used to be called the Indus Innovation. And now it's called the Indus Entrepreneurship. Now it's called the Innovative Entrepreneurship. This global summit over the course of 5 days had 25,000 people. I could not
Wow.
wrap my head around people 10,000 a day showing up. I was not ready for that.
From all over the world.
Worldwide, they have 40 chapters in 30 countries. Their kids code early in life, but they're hardcore coders.
Yeah.
I mean, they code to solve problems.
Exactly.
Issues. And so I went thinking JD Tatum Green, who is a retired HISD teacher who
Right.
has every certification HISD could offer.
Right.
She has them all. And she said, we're going. She said, I'm going because I've always wanted to go and I don't speak the
Yes,
language and I didn't have anybody I can trust. Now we're going because we're going to be part of this.
Right.
I went and they made me a speaker.
Wow.
And so from what I remembered, I was the only board level trustee
To speak.
from an institution
Right.
to speak, which was perfect because my alma mater had just come, which is
Exactly.
why they wanted me to speak.
Right.
So the Congressional App Challenge now allows our kids to compete, and I brought them in to work with Congressman Green's program
Yes.
so that our kids can compete internationally, not just nationally.
Yes. Now I've got to ask you this because you got to see firsthand.
Oh, I got to see it.
And we're living in a time right now, and Rebecca always references this. We're living in a time where education in some states and certain types of education is not something that many of the powers that be feel that there is a great value to. So as Americans, we see ourselves, and especially young people, falling further and further and
I
further
mean,
behind.
you can look here in Texas, and me and you had that conversation. I think you and I have had it too, Priya. Ever since I'm 41,
Yeah.
and as long as I can remember, the education budget in Texas has been cut for over 40 months, probably longer than that. This is just what I remember.
Right.
The educational budget has been cut drastically every single year. It's almost like it's the first thing on the chopping block to go. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, wait.
And seeing that, you got to travel internationally. Of the 25,000 different faces that were represented there, how many American faces did you see? And where do we stand at this point?
I was